The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as 8-year-old Princess Charlotte walked slowly through the garden paths. Her small hands clutched a crumpled piece of paper, and tears streamed down her rosy cheeks. The usually cheerful princess looked nothing like the confident child the public had grown to love through countless royal appearances. Charlotte had always been known for her spirited personality and infectious smile. She was the middle child of Prince William and Catherine, sandwiched between her older brother George and younger brother Louis. While George was being prepared for his future role as king, Charlotte often felt overlooked, despite being fourth in line to the throne herself. That morning had started like any other royal day. Charlotte woke up in her beautifully decorated bedroom, with its soft pink walls and elegant furniture fit for a princess. Her nanny had helped her dress in a pristine white dress with navy blue trim, perfectly pressed and adorned with a small brooch bearing the family crest. Her hair was brushed until it shone and tied back with a matching ribbon. The trouble began during her private tutoring session. Charlotte had been struggling with her mathematics lessons for weeks. While she excelled in languages and loved reading stories, numbers seemed to dance around on the page, refusing to make sense. Her tutor, a stern woman named Mrs. Whitmore, had little patience for the young princess's difficulties. "Princess Charlotte, this is elementary arithmetic," Mrs. Whitmore had said in her crisp voice. "A child of your age and position should master these concepts easily. Your brother George never had such difficulties at your age." The comparison to George stung deeply. Charlotte heard it constantly from various palace staff and even some family members. George was older, more serious, and seemed to understand his royal duties instinctively. Charlotte, with her playful nature and creative mind, often felt like she didn't measure up to the expectations placed upon her. When Charlotte struggled to solve a particularly challenging problem, Mrs. Whitmore's frustration became evident. "Perhaps if you spent less time daydreaming and more time focusing, you would see improvement," she said coldly. A future member of the royal family cannot afford to be mediocre in any subject. The word mediocre hit Charlotte like a physical blow. She had tried so hard to please everyone, to be the perfect princess that everyone expected her to be, but no matter how hard she tried, it never seemed to be enough. The tears started flowing during the lesson, and Mrs. Whitmore's expression only grew more disapproving. "Crying will not solve mathematical equations, Princess Charlotte," the tutor said firmly. "Perhaps you need some time to compose yourself and reflect on the importance of your education." Charlotte was dismissed from her lesson early, still clutching the paper with the unsolved problems. She felt embarrassed, frustrated, and deeply sad. The palace hallways, usually filled with warmth and familiarity, felt cold and unwelcoming as she made her way outside. The gardens had always been Charlotte's refuge. Among the roses and lavender bushes, she could forget about royal protocols and expectations. She could simply be a child. But today, even the beautiful flowers couldn't lift her spirits. She found herself walking aimlessly, the tears continuing to fall as she thought about her tutor's harsh words. Charlotte passed by the ornate fountains and carefully manicured hedges, her footsteps echoing softly on the gravel paths. Palace staff nodded respectfully as she passed, but something in her demeanor told them to maintain their distance. The little princess was clearly in distress, and they knew better than to interfere without being asked. As she rounded a corner near the main entrance gates, Charlotte's steps began to slow. She could see the tall figure of Guard Commander James Morrison standing at his post. Commander Morrison was a decorated military officer who had served the royal family for over 15 years. He was known for his unwavering dedication to duty and his strict adherence to royal protocols. Charlotte had seen Commander Morrison countless times, but had never spoken to him directly. Royal children were taught to maintain appropriate distance from security personnel, and guards were instructed to remain professional and avoid personal interactions with family members unless specifically required for security purposes. The princess hesitated, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She knew she should return to the palace, perhaps find her mother or father to talk about her troubles. But something about Commander Morrison's steady presence drew her attention. He stood perfectly still in his crisp uniform, his eyes scanning the grounds with practiced vigilance. Charlotte took a tentative step forward, then another. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the desperate need to talk to someone who might understand. She had heard the staff whisper about Commander Morrison's own children, though she knew little about his personal life. As she approached the guard post, Charlotte's tears began to flow more freely. The combination of her academic struggles, the pressure of royal expectations, and the harsh words from her tutor had created a perfect storm of emotion that the 8-year-old could no longer contain. Commander Morrison noticed the small figure approaching from the corner of his eye, but protocol demanded that he maintain his position and focus. However, as Charlotte drew closer, the sight of the distressed princess began to tug at something deeper than his professional training. The morning breeze rustled through the trees, and birds chirped cheerfully in the background, creating a stark contrast to the heavy sadness that surrounded the young princess. Charlotte clutched her crumpled mathematics paper tighter, the evidence of her academic struggles serving as a painful reminder of her perceived failures. She was now just a few feet away from Commander Morrison, close enough that he could see the genuine distress in her young eyes. The professional soldier found himself facing an unexpected dilemma that would challenge everything he had been trained to do. Commander Morrison had been standing guard for over 3 hours that morning, his trained eyes constantly scanning the perimeter for any potential security threats. At 42 years old, he was a veteran of multiple military deployments and had earned his position through years of dedicated service. His record was spotless, his conduct always exemplary, and his adherence to protocol absolute. The sight of Princess Charlotte approaching his post should have been routine. Royal family members often passed by during their daily activities, and guards were trained to acknowledge them with a respectful nod while maintaining their vigilance. But something about the little princess's demeanor immediately caught his attention. James Morrison was not just a soldier. He was also a father. He had 2 children of his own, a daughter named Emma who was 10 and a son named Michael who was 7. His work schedule meant he spent long hours away from home, but when he was with his children he was completely devoted to them. He recognized the look of genuine distress on Charlotte's face because he had seen it on his own children's faces during difficult moments. As Charlotte drew closer, Commander Morrison found himself in an unprecedented situation. Royal protocol was clear about maintaining professional distance from family members. Guards were expected to be present but invisible, protective but unobtrusive. Personal interactions were strictly discouraged unless directly related to security matters. But the tears streaming down the 8-year-old's face told a story that transcended protocol. This was not a security issue or an official royal matter. This was simply a child in pain, seeking comfort from an adult who happened to be nearby. Charlotte stopped directly in front of Commander Morrison, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Her small hands trembled as she held the crumpled paper, and her lower lip quivered as she tried to find the courage to speak. The guard remained in his official stance, but his eyes softened as he looked down at the distressed princess. "Excuse me," Charlotte whispered, her voice barely audible above the morning breeze. "I know I'm not supposed to bother you, but I don't know who else to talk to." Commander Morrison felt his heart clench at the vulnerability in her voice. Every instinct as a father wanted to comfort this upset child, but his training as a royal guard reminded him of the strict boundaries that governed his position. He glanced quickly around the grounds to ensure no one was watching, then made a decision that would change both their lives. "What's troubling you, Your Royal Highness?" he asked quietly, his voice gentle but still maintaining the formal address required by protocol. Charlotte's tears flowed faster at his kind tone. "I'm stupid," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Mrs. Whitmore says I can't do mathematics like George can, and that I'm not good enough to be a real princess. She says I'm mediocre, and I don't even know what that means, but I know it's something bad." The raw pain in the child's voice struck Commander Morrison like a physical blow. He had dealt with international security threats, dangerous situations, and high-pressure scenarios throughout his career, but nothing had prepared him for the simple heartbreak of a child who believed she wasn't good enough. "May I see what you're working on?" he asked, glancing once more around the grounds to ensure their conversation remained private. Charlotte hesitantly handed him the crumpled mathematics paper. Commander Morrison looked at the problems, basic addition and subtraction, exercises that would indeed be appropriate for a child her age, but he also noticed something else. The paper was covered with small doodles in the margins. Tiny flowers, butterflies, and intricate patterns decorated the edges of the worksheet. "These drawings are quite beautiful," he observed, pointing to the delicate artwork. "Did you create these?" Charlotte nodded, wiping her nose with her sleeve. I always draw when I'm thinking. Mrs. Whitmore says it's a distraction and that I should focus only on the numbers. Commander Morrison studied the drawings more carefully. They were remarkably detailed and creative for a child her age. The butterflies had intricate wing patterns, and the flowers showed an understanding of perspective and proportion that suggested real artistic talent. You know, he said thoughtfully, these drawings remind me of something my daughter Emma does. She's very artistic too, and sometimes she needs to draw while she thinks about other things. Her teachers used to tell her to stop doodling, but we discovered that drawing actually helps her concentrate better. Charlotte looked up at him with sudden interest. Really? Your daughter draws too? She does. And you know what else? She also found mathematics challenging when she was your age. We worked together to find ways to make numbers more interesting for her. Would you like me to share what we learned? For the first time that morning, Charlotte's face showed a glimmer of hope. You would help me? But aren't you supposed to just stand guard? Commander Morrison glanced around once more, then knelt down to Charlotte's eye level. A clear violation of formal protocol, but something that felt entirely right in the moment. Sometimes, Princess Charlotte, the most important part of protecting someone is making sure they know they're valued and capable. You are not stupid, and you are definitely not mediocre. You have gifts that are uniquely yours. But Mrs. Whitmore says, Mrs. Whitmore may be an excellent tutor, but she doesn't see what I see. She doesn't see the creativity in these beautiful drawings or understand that your mind might work differently than your brother's. Different doesn't mean worse. It just means different. Charlotte listened intently as Commander Morrison continued. My daughter Emma struggled with traditional teaching methods too. But when we started incorporating art into her learning, everything changed. We would draw pictures to represent math problems, create colorful charts, and even make up stories about numbers. Would you be interested in trying some of these techniques? The transformation in Charlotte's demeanor was remarkable. The tears began to dry on her cheeks, and her posture straightened slightly. You really think I could learn mathematics that way? I think you could learn it even better that way, Commander Morrison replied with conviction. Your artistic mind is not a disadvantage, Princess Charlotte. It's a superpower that just needs to be harnessed correctly. As they talked, neither of them noticed the figure watching from a palace window above. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had been looking for her daughter and had spotted the unusual scene in the garden. Rather than intervening immediately, she found herself curious about what was unfolding. Between her daughter and the guard, who had clearly abandoned protocol to help a child in need, Catherine watched from the window with growing amazement as she observed the interaction between her daughter and Commander Morrison. As a mother, she had been deeply concerned about Charlotte's recent struggles with confidence and academic performance. The little princess had become increasingly withdrawn over the past few weeks, and Catherine had noticed her daughter's usual sparkle dimming. What she witnessed in the garden below was remarkable. Charlotte was actually smiling and engaging enthusiastically with the guard, something she hadn't done with her tutor or even family members recently. Catherine could see her daughter's body language changing from defeated to hopeful, and it warmed her heart to see this transformation. Down in the garden, Commander Morrison was explaining a simple mathematical concept using the flowers around them. Look at this rose bush, Princess Charlotte. Can you count how many roses are blooming? Charlotte carefully counted each pink rose. 7 roses, she announced proudly. Excellent. Now if 3 more roses bloom tomorrow, how many will there be in total? Instead of the usual panic that crossed Charlotte's face when dealing with numbers, she looked thoughtful. Can I draw it? She asked hopefully. Of course, Commander Morrison encouraged. He found a stick and smoothed out a patch of dirt near the flower bed. Use this as your drawing surface. Charlotte knelt down and began sketching 7 small circles in the dirt, representing the roses. Then she drew 3 more circles next to them. 7 roses plus 3 more roses equals 10 roses, she said with growing confidence. That's exactly right, Commander Morrison praised. You just solved an addition problem using your artistic skills. Mathematics isn't just about numbers on paper. It's about understanding quantities and relationships in the world around us. Charlotte beamed with pride. For the first time in weeks, she felt capable and smart. Could we try another one? Let's use the butterflies, Commander Morrison suggested, pointing to several colorful butterflies fluttering around the lavender bushes. I count 4 butterflies right now. If 2 fly away, how many will remain? Charlotte drew 4 butterfly shapes in the dirt, then carefully erased 2 of them. 2 butterflies would be left, she said confidently. Perfect. You're a natural mathematician, Princess Charlotte. You just needed to find the right way to visualize the problems. From her window, Catherine felt tears welling up in her eyes. This guard had accomplished in 20 minutes what trained tutors hadn't managed in weeks. He had connected with Charlotte's learning style and helped her discover her own capabilities. More importantly, he had treated her daughter with genuine kindness and respect, seeing her as an individual rather than just a royal child who needed to meet certain expectations. Catherine made a decision. Instead of interrupting this magical moment, she would let it continue and then find a way to express her gratitude to this remarkable man who had shown such compassion for her daughter. Back in the garden, Commander Morrison was sharing more about his own children. Emma, my daughter, also loves to draw. She's created an entire notebook full of mathematical art projects. She draws geometric patterns, illustrates story problems, and even designs her own number games. Would you like me to ask her to share some of her ideas with you? Charlotte's eyes widened with excitement. She would do that? Even though I'm a princess and she's, well, not a princess? Commander Morrison smiled at the innocent question. Princess Charlotte, friendship and learning don't depend on titles or positions. Emma would be thrilled to share her love of artistic mathematics with someone who understands her creative approach to learning. I would love that, Charlotte said eagerly. I've never had a friend who likes to draw and do mathematics at the same time. Then we'll make that happen, Commander Morrison promised. But first, let's work on building your confidence with these concepts. The most important thing to remember is that everyone learns differently. Some people learn best by listening, others by reading, and others, like you, learn best by creating and visualizing. Charlotte nodded seriously, absorbing this wisdom. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't understand that, does she? Mrs. Whitmore is an excellent teacher in many ways, Commander Morrison said diplomatically. But every teacher has their own methods. Sometimes we need to find the approach that works best for each individual student. There's nothing wrong with your learning style, Princess Charlotte. It's actually quite special. As they continued their impromptu lesson using flowers, butterflies, and dirt drawings to solve mathematical problems, Charlotte's confidence continued to grow. She began asking questions instead of shutting down, and her natural curiosity started to emerge. Commander Morrison, she said thoughtfully, do you think I could become good at mathematics if I keep practicing this way? I don't just think you could become good at it, he replied with certainty. I think you could become excellent at it. Your creative mind gives you advantages that traditional learners don't have. You can see patterns and relationships in ways that others might miss. Charlotte stood up and dusted off her dress, looking much more composed than she had an hour earlier. The crumpled mathematics paper was still in her hand, but now it didn't seem like evidence of her failure. Instead, it represented a starting point for a new approach to learning. Commander Morrison, she said formally, thank you for helping me. I know you're supposed to be guarding the palace, not teaching mathematics to crying princesses. Commander Morrison stood and resumed his official posture, but his expression remained warm. Princess Charlotte, protecting what matters most sometimes means more than just watching for physical threats. Today, helping you discover your own capabilities felt like the most important duty I could perform. Charlotte smiled brightly and gave him a small curtsy. I'm going to go find my mother and tell her about the new way to do mathematics. And maybe I can ask her about meeting your daughter Emma. As Charlotte skipped back toward the palace, her step light and her spirits lifted, Commander Morrison returned to his guard duties with a deep sense of satisfaction. He had broken protocol, risked his position, and crossed professional boundaries, but he had also helped a child discover her own worth and potential. What he didn't know was that his actions had been observed and that they would soon lead to consequences he never could have anticipated. Catherine waited in her private sitting room, having sent word for Commander Morrison to meet with her after his shift ended. She had spent the afternoon thinking about what she had witnessed and felt a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and concern about the implications of what had occurred. When Commander Morrison was escorted to her sitting room that evening, he appeared understandably nervous. Being summoned by a senior member of the royal family was never a casual matter, especially when one had potentially violated established protocols earlier that day. Your Royal Highness, Commander Morrison said with a formal bow. You wish to see me? Catherine gestured for him to sit, which immediately put him more at ease. Royal protocol typically required him to remain standing unless specifically invited to do otherwise. Please, Commander Morrison, make yourself comfortable. I wanted to speak with you about what happened with Charlotte today. Commander Morrison's face grew serious. Your Royal Highness, I want to apologize if my actions were inappropriate. I understand that I may have overstepped my boundaries by engaging with Princess Charlotte in a personal capacity. Catherine raised a hand to stop him. Commander Morrison, you have nothing to apologize for. What I witnessed today was extraordinary. In 20 minutes, you accomplished something that professional tutors haven't been able to achieve in weeks. You gave my daughter back her confidence and helped her see learning in an entirely new way. The relief on Commander Morrison's face was evident, but he remained cautious. I hope I didn't cause any problems, Your Royal Highness. I know that personal interactions between staff and family members are generally discouraged. They are, Catherine acknowledged, but sometimes circumstances call for flexibility in our approach. Tell me, how did you know to help Charlotte in the way that you did? Commander Morrison relaxed slightly as he began to share his story. My own daughter, Emma, struggled with similar challenges when she was Charlotte's age. She's a bright child, but traditional teaching methods didn't connect with her learning style. My wife and I worked with her teachers to develop more creative approaches to education. Catherine leaned forward with interest. Your daughter is artistic as well? Very much so, Commander Morrison confirmed. She sees the world in patterns and colors and shapes. When we started incorporating her artistic abilities into her academic work, everything changed. Her confidence grew, her grades improved, and most importantly, she began to love learning again. That's exactly what I want for Charlotte, Catherine said earnestly. She's always been creative and artistic, but lately she's been struggling with self-doubt. Her tutor, while well-qualified, has a very traditional approach that doesn't seem to connect with Charlotte's learning style. Commander Morrison nodded understandingly. Princess Charlotte is incredibly bright, Your Royal Highness. She just needs to discover that intelligence can take many forms. When I saw her drawings on that mathematics paper, I recognized immediately that she has a gift that could be used to enhance her learning rather than distract from it. Catherine had been thinking about this very issue all afternoon. Commander Morrison, I have an unusual request. Would you be willing to work with Charlotte's educational team to develop more creative approaches to her learning? I know it's far outside your normal duties, but your insight today was invaluable. Commander Morrison looked surprised but honored by the request. Your Royal Highness, I would be happy to help in any way I can. However, I should mention that my wife, Sarah, is actually a qualified teacher. She specializes in working with children who have different learning styles. Perhaps she could be of more direct assistance. This information delighted Catherine. Your wife is a teacher? That's wonderful. Would she be interested in consulting with Charlotte's educational team? We could arrange for her to observe some lessons and provide recommendations. I believe she would be very interested, Commander Morrison replied. Sarah is passionate about helping children discover their unique strengths. She would be honored to assist Princess Charlotte in any way possible. Catherine stood and walked to the window overlooking the garden where the morning's interaction had taken place. You know, Commander Morrison, what impressed me most about today wasn't just your educational insight. It was your kindness and respect for Charlotte as an individual. You saw her pain and responded with compassion, even though it meant stepping outside your assigned role. Your Royal Highness, I've been trained to protect the royal family, but I believe that protection sometimes extends beyond physical security. Today, Princess Charlotte needed someone to help protect her self-esteem and confidence. Catherine turned back to face him, her expression warm with approval. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of. I want to arrange a meeting between you, your wife, Charlotte's current tutor, and myself. We need to develop an educational approach that honors Charlotte's unique gifts while still ensuring she receives the comprehensive education appropriate for her position, Commander. Morrison felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about this expanded role. I'm honored by your confidence in me, Your Royal Highness. I want to do everything possible to help Princess Charlotte succeed. There's something else, Catherine continued. Charlotte asked about meeting your daughter, Emma. She was fascinated by the idea of connecting with another child who shares her interests in both art and mathematics. Would your family be comfortable with arranging such a meeting? Commander Morrison's face lit up. Emma would be absolutely thrilled. She's actually created several art projects that demonstrate mathematical concepts. She would love to share them with Princess Charlotte. Excellent. Let's plan a proper introduction. Perhaps Emma could visit the palace for an educational playdate. It would be wonderful for Charlotte to have a friend who understands her creative approach to learning. As their conversation continued, both Catherine and Commander Morrison began to envision new possibilities for Charlotte's education. They discussed incorporating art into mathematics lessons, using creative projects to teach historical concepts, and finding ways to celebrate Charlotte's unique perspective rather than trying to force her into traditional learning molds. One more thing, Commander Morrison, Catherine said as their meeting drew to a close. I want you to know that your actions today demonstrated the very best qualities we could hope for in someone who serves our family. Your willingness to see Charlotte as a child in need rather than just a royal protocol requirement shows the kind of character and compassion that makes a real difference. Commander Morrison stood and bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Serving your family has always been an honor, but today reminded me why that service is so meaningful. Princess Charlotte is a remarkable child, and I'm grateful I could play a small part in helping her see her own potential. As Commander Morrison left the sitting room, Catherine felt more hopeful about Charlotte's future than she had in weeks. Sometimes the most profound help came from unexpected sources, and today a dedicated security guard had shown her family that true protection meant nurturing the whole person, not just ensuring physical safety. 3 days later, Charlotte woke up with an excitement she hadn't felt in months. Today was the day she would meet Emma, Commander Morrison's daughter, and she could hardly contain her anticipation. Catherine had arranged for Emma and her mother Sarah to visit the palace for what they were calling an educational friendship meeting. Charlotte had spent the previous evening preparing for Emma's visit. She had gathered all her art supplies, organized her favorite books, and even practiced some of the mathematical concepts Commander Morrison had taught her using the garden method. She wanted to show Emma that she had been working hard and making progress. Sarah Morrison arrived at the palace with her 10-year-old daughter Emma, both feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Sarah was the experienced teacher, but she had never worked within the royal household. Emma, meanwhile, was thrilled beyond words to meet a real princess, especially one who shared her love of art and learning. Catherine personally greeted them in one of the palace's smaller, more comfortable sitting rooms that had been converted into a temporary learning space for the occasion. Colorful art supplies were spread across several tables along with various books and educational materials that Sarah had brought to share. Emma, I'm so pleased to meet you, Catherine said warmly. Charlotte has been talking about you nonstop since we arranged this visit. Emma curtsied politely, having practiced the gesture many times with her mother. Your Royal Highness, thank you for inviting me. I brought some of my art math projects to share with Princess Charlotte. When Charlotte entered the room, both girls seemed to instantly recognize kindred spirits in each other. Charlotte was dressed more casually than usual, in comfortable clothes that would allow her to work on art projects without worry. Emma had brought a large portfolio filled with her creative mathematical artwork. Princess Charlotte, Emma said shyly, I heard you like to draw while you think about math problems. I do that too. Charlotte's face brightened immediately. Really? Commander Morrison told me about your beautiful mathematical art. Can you show me some of it? Emma opened her portfolio eagerly, revealing page after page of colorful, creative mathematical illustrations. She had geometric patterns that demonstrated multiplication tables, story problems illustrated with detailed drawings, and even mathematical poetry accompanied by artistic borders. This is amazing, Charlotte breathed, studying a page where Emma had drawn a garden scene to illustrate a word problem about planting flowers. You made mathematics look beautiful. Sarah watched the interaction with professional interest while Catherine observed with maternal satisfaction. Both women could see that the girls were connecting naturally over their shared experiences and interests. Emma, Charlotte continued, I've been trying the drawing method your father taught me, but I'm still not very good at it. Could you teach me some of your techniques? I'd love to, Emma replied enthusiastically. And maybe you could teach me some things too. I've never been inside a real palace before, and I bet you know lots of interesting things about history and royal traditions. Catherine and Sarah exchanged pleased glances as the girls began working together on their first collaborative project. Sarah had suggested they start with a simple mathematical concept that could be illustrated artistically, and the girls had chosen to create a visual representation of fractions using pizza slices. As Emma and Charlotte worked side by side, drawing and coloring their fraction pizzas, their conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their favorite subjects, their struggles with certain topics, and their shared love of creative expression. Charlotte found herself feeling more relaxed and confident than she had in weeks. "You know," Emma said thoughtfully as she added pepperoni to her pizza slice, "my dad told me that you're really smart, but that some people don't understand how your mind works." "The same thing happened to me." Charlotte looked up from her drawing. "Really? But you seem so confident about everything." "I wasn't always," Emma admitted. "Last year my teacher kept telling me to stop drawing during math class. She said I was being disruptive and not paying attention, but the truth was I needed to draw to help me think. My mom had to explain to the teacher that drawing actually helped me learn better." This revelation was profound for Charlotte. "So other children have the same problem I do?" "It's not really a problem," Emma corrected gently. "It's just a different way of learning. My mom says there are lots of different types of intelligence, and creative intelligence is just as valuable as any other kind." Sarah had been listening to the girls' conversation while observing their work methods. She was impressed by how naturally they supported and encouraged each other. Both children were demonstrating exactly the kind of collaborative learning that could benefit Charlotte's overall educational experience. "Girls," Sarah interjected, "you're both doing excellent work. Charlotte, I can see that you have a very strong visual learning style, just like Emma. Have you ever tried creating math stories with your drawings?" Charlotte shook her head. "What do you mean?" Emma jumped in excitedly. "Oh, that's one of my favorite things to do. You create a story with characters and adventures, but the story includes math problems that the characters have to solve. Want to try making one together?" "Yes," Charlotte agreed immediately. For the next hour, the girls collaborated on creating an illustrated mathematical adventure story about two princesses who had to solve various mathematical puzzles to rescue a captured dragon. Charlotte contributed beautiful character drawings and castle illustrations, while Emma helped structure the mathematical elements of the story. Catherine watched in amazement as her daughter demonstrated creativity, problem-solving skills, and mathematical understanding that had never emerged during traditional tutoring sessions. Charlotte was not only keeping up with Emma, but was contributing unique ideas and approaches that enhanced their collaborative work. When it came time for Emma and Sarah to leave, both girls were reluctant to end their session. They had not only completed several mathematical art projects, but had also laid the foundation for a genuine friendship. "Emma," Charlotte said as they prepared to say goodbye, "could we do this again soon? I have so many more ideas for math stories and art projects." "I would love that," Emma replied. "Maybe next time I could show you how to make mathematical jewelry. I learned how to create patterns with beads that demonstrate geometric sequences." Catherine arranged for regular educational playdates between the girls, recognizing that this friendship was providing Charlotte with something that traditional tutoring never could: the confidence that comes from knowing you're not alone in your learning style, and the joy that comes from sharing your passions with someone who truly understands them. As Emma and Sarah left the palace that afternoon, Charlotte was already planning their next project and looking forward to her regular mathematics lessons for the first time in months. The transformation that had begun with Commander Morrison's kindness in the garden was blossoming into a comprehensive change in Charlotte's approach to learning and her confidence in her own abilities. 2 weeks after Emma's first visit, Catherine decided it was time to address the elephant in the room: Mrs. Whitmore and her traditional teaching methods. While the elderly tutor was highly qualified and had taught many royal children successfully, it was clear that her approach was not working for Charlotte's unique learning style. Catherine arranged a meeting with Mrs. Whitmore, Sarah Morrison, and Charlotte's other educational advisors to discuss implementing a new, more creative approach to the princess's education. The meeting took place in the palace's formal education wing, where Charlotte had been struggling with her lessons for months. Mrs. Whitmore arrived dressed in her usual severe black dress, carrying a leather briefcase filled with traditional textbooks and structured lesson plans. She had been Charlotte's tutor for 8 months and firmly believed that royal children needed rigorous, conventional education to prepare them for their future responsibilities. Sarah Morrison came prepared with examples of Charlotte's recent work, portfolios of creative learning techniques, and research about different learning styles. As a professional educator, she understood the importance of adapting teaching methods to individual student needs. Mrs. Whitmore, Catherine began diplomatically. We wanted to discuss some adjustments to Charlotte's educational program. We've noticed that she responds very well to more creative and visual learning approaches. Mrs. Whitmore's expression remained stern. Your Royal Highness, with all due respect, Princess Charlotte requires discipline and structure. Creative approaches may seem enjoyable, but they don't provide the rigorous foundation necessary for someone in her position. Sarah leaned forward respectfully. Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your concerns about maintaining educational standards. However, research shows that children learn more effectively when teaching methods align with their natural learning styles. Charlotte's recent progress using artistic and visual techniques has been remarkable. Progress? Mrs. Whitmore questioned skeptically. Drawing pictures and playing with art supplies may keep the child entertained, but it doesn't teach her the fundamental skills she needs. Mathematics is about precision and logical thinking, not creative expression. Catherine had anticipated this resistance. Mrs. Whitmore, let me share some examples of Charlotte's recent work. She produced several of the mathematical art projects that Charlotte and Emma had created together. These demonstrate both mathematical understanding and creative problem-solving. Charlotte solved complex word problems, demonstrated understanding of fractions and geometric concepts, and showed logical reasoning skills. Mrs. Whitmore examined the colorful projects with obvious disapproval. Your Royal Highness, while these may show some mathematical concepts, they lack the rigor and precision required for proper royal education. Princess Charlotte needs to learn to work with numbers directly, not hide behind artistic distractions. Sarah tried a different approach. Mrs. Whitmore, what specific mathematical concepts do you believe Charlotte needs to master at her current level? Basic arithmetic operations, fraction calculations, geometric measurements, and problem-solving strategies, Mrs. Whitmore replied promptly. Excellent, Sarah said, pulling out Charlotte's portfolio. Let me show you how she's demonstrated mastery of each of these areas through her creative projects. She went through each artwork systematically, pointing out the mathematical concepts Charlotte had successfully applied. In this project, she calculated fractions by dividing pizza illustrations into equal parts. Here she demonstrated geometric measurements by creating scaled drawings of palace rooms. This story problem about garden planning shows her problem-solving abilities and understanding of addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Mrs. Whitmore studied the work more carefully, her expression gradually shifting from disapproval to grudging interest. While she still maintained her preference for traditional methods, she couldn't deny that Charlotte had indeed demonstrated mathematical understanding in these projects. Catherine decided to address the core issue directly. Mrs. Whitmore, Charlotte's confidence and enthusiasm for learning have improved dramatically since we began incorporating creative approaches. She's engaging with mathematical concepts that previously caused her distress and anxiety. Furthermore, Catherine continued, she's developing critical thinking skills by connecting mathematical concepts to real-world applications and creative expression. These are valuable abilities for anyone, including future members of the royal family. Mrs. Whitmore remained silent for several moments, clearly wrestling with her professional convictions. Finally, she spoke carefully. Your Royal Highness, I have served the royal family for over 20 years using proven educational methods. While I acknowledge that Princess Charlotte has shown some progress with these alternative approaches, I remain concerned about the long-term implications. Sarah sensed an opportunity for compromise. Mrs. Whitmore, what if we could combine the best of both approaches? We could maintain the rigorous standards you believe are important while incorporating creative elements that help Charlotte learn more effectively. How would that work in practice? Mrs. Whitmore asked, her tone suggesting she was at least willing to consider the possibility. We could structure lessons that include both traditional exercises and creative projects, Sarah explained. For example, Charlotte could complete conventional mathematics problems and then demonstrate her understanding through artistic projects. This would ensure she masters the foundational skills while also developing her creative and critical thinking abilities. Catherine supported this suggestion. This approach would allow Charlotte to develop confidence in traditional academic areas while honoring her natural learning style. She could prove her competency through conventional testing while also expressing her understanding creatively. Mrs. Whitmore considered this proposal seriously. Despite her traditional views, she genuinely cared about Charlotte's education and wanted the princess to succeed. "I suppose we could trial such an approach," she said reluctantly. "However, I would insist on maintaining specific academic standards and regular assessment of Princess Charlotte's progress using conventional measures." "Absolutely," Sarah agreed. "Academic standards should never be compromised. The goal is to help Charlotte meet those standards using methods that work best for her learning style." Catherine felt a surge of relief and optimism. "Excellent. Let's develop a comprehensive plan that incorporates both traditional rigor and creative approaches. Mrs. Whitmore, your experience and knowledge are invaluable. Sarah, your expertise in alternative learning methods will be crucial. Together, you can create an educational program that serves Charlotte's unique needs while meeting royal expectations." Mrs. Whitmore nodded formally. "Very well, Your Royal Highness, I am willing to collaborate on this new approach, provided we maintain appropriate standards and document Princess Charlotte's progress carefully." As the meeting concluded, Catherine felt hopeful that they had found a path forward that would honor both Charlotte's learning style and the educational requirements of her royal position. The key would be ensuring that Mrs. Whitmore and Sarah could work together effectively, combining their different but valuable perspectives on education. The real test would come when they implemented these changes in Charlotte's actual lessons and saw how the princess responded to this blended approach to learning. 6 months later, the transformation in Princess Charlotte was remarkable and undeniable. The little girl who had once approached her lessons with dread and tears now bounded into her learning sessions with enthusiasm and confidence. The collaborative approach between Mrs. Whitmore and Sarah Morrison had created an educational environment that honored both academic rigor and creative expression. Charlotte's daily routine now included a perfect blend of traditional and innovative learning methods. She would begin each mathematics session by working through conventional problems with Mrs. Whitmore, demonstrating her mastery of fundamental concepts. Then she would explore those same concepts through creative projects guided by Sarah's expertise, cementing her understanding through artistic expression and real-world applications. On this particular morning, Charlotte was presenting her latest project to a small audience that included her parents, both her tutors, Commander Morrison, and Emma, who had become a regular study partner and dear friend. The project was a comprehensive presentation about the mathematical principles behind castle architecture, combining her love of art with geometry, measurement, and historical research. "Ladies and gentlemen," Charlotte began confidently, standing beside a large poster covered with her detailed architectural drawings. "Today I want to share what I've learned about how mathematics helps build strong and beautiful castles." Prince William and Catherine exchanged proud glances as they watched their daughter present with poise and enthusiasm. This was the same child who had been in tears just months earlier, convinced she was not smart enough for royal expectations. Charlotte pointed to her first drawing, a cutaway view of a castle wall. "Mrs. Whitmore taught me that the strength of a wall depends on mathematical ratios. The thickness must be calculated based on the height and the materials used. I learned to use multiplication and division to determine these measurements." She moved to her next illustration, showing the geometric patterns in castle windows. "Sarah helped me discover that the beautiful rose windows in castles use complex geometric principles. I created my own designs using compasses and protractors, and then calculated the angles and proportions needed to make them structurally sound." Emma watched her friend with obvious pride and admiration. Their friendship had grown into a genuine partnership, where they challenged and supported each other academically and creatively. Emma often contributed her own research and artistic skills to Charlotte's projects, while Charlotte shared her access to historical resources and royal archives. Mrs. Whitmore, who had initially resisted the creative approach, now found herself genuinely impressed by the depth of Charlotte's understanding. The princess was not only mastering mathematical concepts but was applying them in sophisticated ways that demonstrated genuine comprehension rather than mere memorization. "Princess Charlotte," Mrs. Whitmore interjected, "can you explain how you calculated the load-bearing requirements for the drawbridge mechanism?" Charlotte smiled confidently and moved to a detailed diagram she had created. "I used the principles of leverage and weight distribution that we studied last month. The counterweight needs to be exactly twice the weight of the bridge section to achieve perfect balance. I calculated this using the mathematical formulas you taught me, and then I built a working model to test my calculations. She demonstrated, with a small wooden model that actually functioned, showing how the mathematical principles translated into practical engineering. Prince William leaned forward with interest, clearly fascinated by his daughter's thorough understanding of both theoretical and applied mathematics. Sarah Morrison beamed with satisfaction as she watched Charlotte seamlessly blend artistic creativity with mathematical precision. The approach they had developed was proving that children didn't have to choose between creativity and academic rigor. They could excel at both when given the right environment and support. Commander Morrison felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he watched the presentation. His spontaneous decision to comfort a crying child in the garden had ultimately led to a complete transformation in that child's educational experience and self-confidence. Charlotte had grown from a girl who believed she was stupid and mediocre into a confident young learner who could tackle complex problems with enthusiasm. For my final section, Charlotte announced, I want to share what I've learned about the mathematics of siege warfare. She unveiled a detailed battle scene showing how medieval armies used mathematical principles to calculate trajectory angles for catapults and the geometric planning required for effective siege strategies. This is where history, mathematics, and engineering all come together, Charlotte explained enthusiastically. Engineers had to calculate angles and distances, understand physics principles like gravity and momentum, and plan geometric approaches to overcome defensive obstacles. Catherine felt tears welling up in her eyes as she watched her daughter demonstrate not just academic knowledge, but genuine passion for learning. Charlotte had discovered that intelligence could take many forms, and that her creative mind was an asset rather than a liability. When Charlotte finished her presentation, the room erupted in heartfelt applause. Both her tutors looked satisfied with her progress, her parents glowed with pride, and Emma gave her an enthusiastic hug. Charlotte, Prince William said warmly, that was an exceptional presentation. You've demonstrated mastery of complex mathematical concepts while creating something beautiful and historically meaningful. I'm incredibly proud of your hard work and creativity. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, her usually stern expression softened with genuine approval. Princess Charlotte, I must admit that 6 months ago, I would not have believed such progress was possible. You have proven that academic excellence can be achieved through multiple pathways. Your work demonstrates both the rigor I require and the creativity that makes learning meaningful. Sarah Morrison added, Charlotte, you've shown that when we honor different learning styles and provide appropriate support, every child can reach their full potential. Your journey has been inspiring to watch. Commander Morrison approached Charlotte with a formal bow but a warm smile. Princess Charlotte, do you remember that morning in the garden when you felt like you couldn't do mathematics? Charlotte giggled at the memory. I was so upset and I thought I was the worst student ever. Look at you now, Commander Morrison said proudly. You've become not just a mathematician but an artist, a historian, and an engineer all rolled into one. Most importantly, you've learned that your unique way of thinking is a strength, not a weakness. As the presentation gathering concluded, Charlotte felt a profound sense of accomplishment and belonging. She had not only mastered the academic skills expected of her, but had done so while remaining true to her creative nature. She had learned that being different didn't mean being deficient, and that the right support could help any child discover their potential. Emma hugged her friend goodbye, already planning their next collaborative project. Mrs. Whitmore packed up her materials with a new appreciation for alternative teaching methods. Sarah Morrison felt satisfied that her educational philosophy had been validated through Charlotte's success. Commander Morrison returned to his security duties, knowing that sometimes the most important protection he could provide was believing in a child's potential and helping them believe in themselves. And Catherine and William walked back to their private quarters, grateful for the reminder that the best solutions often come from unexpected places and that true royal service sometimes means being willing to break conventional rules for the sake of a child's happiness and growth. Charlotte's transformation from a tearful, struggling student to a confident, capable learner had taught everyone involved that intelligence, creativity, and academic success could coexist beautifully when the right support and understanding were provided. Her story became a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of recognizing individual learning styles, and the magic that can happen when adults are willing to see children as unique individuals, rather than just products to be shaped by traditional expectations.